to Tuesday Newsday, your #1 resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. And see, that kind of worked out with the two, I guess. And as promised, it's here, the second video this week covering just about everything VR at this year's Consumer Electronics Show. Last video, I talked about a bunch of new headsets that are on their way, but this is the fun one. Shocking electrostimulation suits, VR gloves set to replace controllers, the best AR displays I have ever seen, some PSVR 2 impressions, and so much more. We've got a lot to cover, so let's just get right into the news. So I figured we'd start this one off with a device that I've been really excited about for a while now. As much as I love the Index and Quest Pro controllers, and even as cool as the new Flp VR controllers looked in the last video, I can't help but constantly look at controllers themselves for VR and wonder if there's a better way to do VR in general. I mean, when you think about it, thumbsticks and buttons both make sense for VR games, but at the same time, what if you didn't have to hold onto a chunk of plastic just to control VR? And this is where the contact gloves come in. Made by DiverX, a company that you may recognize, these gloves are built mainly for the purpose of social VR, aiming to be a complete controller replacement, while also offering haptic feedback. And something that makes them a little special is that they're not tracked using ultraleap or hand tracking like on the Quest, instead by using a set of Vive or Tundra trackers, featuring full skeletal input, so there's finger tracking, vibration haptic feedback on the top of the glove, and interestingly enough, at least on the Pro versions, feature a tactile haptic feedback on the fingertips. And really, the biggest problem with using gloves for VR is how do you actually control the game? And DiverX did something pretty interesting here. Every button and typical input is mapped to either a gesture or by physically connecting your thumb to a corresponding part of the glove. So for a trigger pull, you just act like you're pulling a trigger, or to grip, you just make a fist or grip. The A, B, X, Y button and joystick are all on the index fingers. So when you connect a pad on your thumb to a pad on your finger, it's registered as a button press. The joystick, on the other hand, is done by putting your thumb in a certain position and moving your hand in a joystick-like motion in the direction that you want to move. And actually, using the gloves, they work a lot better than you'd think. And while certainly not perfect for something like Pavlov, I can see them being really useful for VR chat or even more relaxed action games. The lab demo is showing off the functionality pretty well, actually. Being able to pull back a bow without ever holding a controller feels pretty good. Although I really should say that these are far from being complete, and there is a learning curve to using them. It's not like you're going to instantly know how to use these and be good at them. And DiverX is actively iterating on the design and software and hardware. But all that being said, they're definitely not cheap, currently on Kickstarter going for around $500. I think they're definitely for a specific kind of person that wants something like this. I know I'm kind of one of those people, and I'll definitely have to do a lot more testing on future iterations, but it is pretty exciting to see a glove like this that can actually emulate every typical controller function. Even though it's $500, there's really nothing else that does it unless you want to build your own gloves, and that's also not for everyone. So pretty cool to see. Another really fun and interesting device that I got to try out last year was the Owo Skin, the very first electrostimulation shirt available to general consumers. And this year I got to try out their newest prototype sleeves that turned up these sensations to a completely new level, allowing me to not only feel VR, but unlike typical vibration haptics, electrostimulation allows your muscles and body to actually react to in-game stimuli. And to give you an idea of how crazy this idea is, before Owo, the only real option for electrostimulation in VR was the Tesla suit, which is a $13,000 setup. And while admittedly the Tesla suit is significantly more advanced and offers way more functionality like full body tracking, the $400 Owo is a little more attainable for a standard VR accessory. So the Owo Skin works by sending electricity through an array of electrodes on the shirt, making direct contact with your skin. And again, unlike typical vibration feedback, this allows you to more properly and realistically emulate all sorts of sensations, like a punch, rain falling on your shoulders, a dagger entering your stomach, collision with walls even. But testing out their newest prototype, these add-on sleeves allowed for a totally new range of sensations. Legit gun recoil, feeling weight and even tension when using virtual objects. Like for example, when pulling back a bow, my biceps and triceps are literally getting shocked into becoming tense. When firing a virtual gun, the recoil sends impulses up my arm. And yes, it's a pretty intense feeling, but certainly is extremely immersive. And good news if you want to see more on the Owo Owo Skin, I did actually get a unit, which is really exciting, and it's something that I've been waiting literally a year for. And I'm definitely looking forward to pushing this thing as far as it can go, but also seeing how it functions in a typical VR usage scenario. So now let's talk about something just a little different for a moment, because it's probably one of the coolest things I saw at CES in general. And it also generated quite the crowd. I got to see and see through some of the best true augmented reality displays that I have ever seen. Most of the time when I try something related to augmented reality that isn't pass-through, I'm reminded that true, really good AR is still many years away and many dollars away, which is exactly why almost every manufacturer is making VR headsets essentially double as AR headsets with mixed reality pass-through. I see this comment a lot of people asking why should I even care about pass-through, and it's not just about cameras and seeing the physical world in VR. The whole pass-through craze is about starting that developer economy and building those skills now so that when we eventually have real AR glasses, there's already a fleet of apps and developers already ready for it because they've been developing and experimenting in AR outside of the lab. Plus, if you get the right applications, mixed reality is just pretty cool. But back on these displays, Ant Reality showed off 3 of their newest modules, one being their base crossfire lens, and the others being their 100-degree field of view module and their 120-degree field of view module, using micro OLED displays attached to their specialized lenses to essentially bend and combine the light from the displays and natural light to enter your eyes. Basically what's called a waveguide. And what you get as a result is a super bright, high-resolution augmented reality image on a lens. And some of you probably heard 120-degree field of view and shrugged, while others are shocked right now that I said AR and 120-degree field of view in the same sentence. Most other AR devices right now have a very limited field of view of 40 to 50 degrees. So this is actually pretty crazy. And this even has direct usages for VR as well. And Reality showing a demo using what's called a liquid crystal light valve, cutting out all ambient light from the lens, giving you a VR-like display, and with the flick of a button, you're back to a clear transparent lens. And this obviously could potentially do a lot for both AR and VR, but I should also mention that Ant Reality is just the creator of these specialized lenses. They're not in particular making AR headsets or VR headsets. They just made this really special crossfire lens that other companies can use, and it's up to AR and VR manufacturers to license this lens technology. Still, this is one of the coolest things I saw at CES, easily the brightest, highest resolution, and most usable AR displays and lenses I've ever seen, and I'm excited to see where these things end up. And I have a feeling that we're going to be talking about Ant Reality a little bit more in the future. Down by the Ultraleap booth, I got to spend a few minutes with the long-awaited Lynx R1, probably one of the most interesting VR headsets to have been created over the past 2 years or so, and this was a special demo because this version that I'm holding is basically the final production unit that will be shipping to customers, something that I know quite a few people have been waiting almost years for. With pretty darn good stereo mixed reality pass-through and some of the best hand tracking available via Ultraleap, I was able to drag a planet using hand tracking from a totally VR scene and then place it in reality, which is pretty cool. And I didn't get to try out any other standalone application or test out much else with the Lynx, but I do have a couple concerns. While I'm excited for it and Lynx's future beyond the R1, I do have to wonder how this headset stacks up head-to-head directly side by side with things like the XR Elite and Quest Pro, especially considering that they all have similar XR2 standalone and PSVR and mixed reality capabilities, albeit the HTC and Meta offerings do it at a much higher resolution for a significantly higher cost. And at the original time of the Lynx announcement, it was basically the only headset offering color mixed reality pass-through, but by now, a year or two later, mostly because of supply chain delays and production, it's seemingly the last headset to release with this capability. So it'll be interesting to compare later on. Still, it's really good to see a final production unit. It's certainly improved on build quality since the last demo I had at AWE. And another thing to add, this is probably the first flip mechanism I've really liked on a headset. I can imagine this being a really solid developer's or work headset. But now let's talk about 3 other VR gloves that fall into 3 different categories: experimental but cool, as consumer as you can possibly get, and as enterprise as you can possibly get. We'll start with the cool one. Last week I mentioned AI Silk, a company that specializes in making devices out of fabric. Using conductive fibers, they basically turn shirts, or in this case gloves, into electrostimulation devices. Pretty much, instead of using medical electrodes, the silk itself is the electrode. I mean, you could quite literally make shock underwear if you really wanted to, but what they're showing off is just a basic mock-up of a device called the LED Skin, a VR-focused glove that AI Silk is making using their own technology. And apparently it was somewhere at CES in a demoable state, but they didn't have a workable demo at at their booth, so all I have are these mock-ups. And I also haven't met anybody that did try them, so unfortunately, other than just the basic display, don't really have much to say on them. Still an interesting and pretty cool idea though. On the consumer side of things though, bhaptics is finally getting ready to ship their haptic gloves that I initially tried out last year. And it's probably good that these things took an extra year to launch because they got way better. In the demo, I was able to use hand tracking to give high fives, handshakes, and slaps to a virtual clone of myself, feeling the vibration haptics throughout my fingertips. And I could actually see this being something I'd use. The only problem is that they're limited to Quest and Ultra Leap hand tracking, and there's really no controls. But for the haptic feedback that I did get, and for just about the cheapest haptic glove on the market at $300 for a dev kit, it is something pretty unique. Also regarding bhaptics, something that I've been waiting for as well, they've announced their official VR chat OSC support, so in the future, bhaptics Vest will work natively with VR chat, at least on the PC client, and all you have to do now is some pretty basic avatar work, which is awesome news and something that I will definitely cover in the future. Contact CI, on the other hand, is on the far enterprise of things with their newest gloves, the Maestro, and these do something that the others just don't. Not only do they have haptic feedback, but they also have force feedback, allowing you to grip and hold virtual items. Say you're holding a virtual sphere in VR, then your fingers will be held back around the geometry of something that you're holding only virtually. And when I do eventually revisit the Ready Player One setup I made last year, these will definitely be the gloves I end up using. There's a really crazy brain effect when it feels like you're holding something that's not actually there. It's incredibly immersive. But now we can talk about the PSVR 2 and my sad CES experience with it. I actually wasn't able to get a PSVR 2 demo as much as I tried. There was a crazy sign-up process every morning of CES with very limited time slots, and every time I tried to sign up for the demos, they were booked almost instantly, which is probably something good to say about the hype for it. But I have actually tried the PSVR 2 on quite a few occasions, none of which were filmed for obvious reasons. Up until now, it's been a really secretive device, but now that PSVR 2 demos are basically public, I can probably echo my thoughts and impressions before I get the headset next month. My pre-order is in and I'm ready to fully review it, but on to my delayed impressions, I guess. Just to be real, the PSVR 2 is pretty freaking awesome. It's a massive step up from the original. There's good eye tracking, pretty good comfort. The PS5 pulls off PC level graphics, and the best part definitely has to be the OLED displays. Everything is just beautiful with great contrast ratios and colors, and the field of view is around index level. And the best way that I've been describing it is it's kind of the closest thing to the enjoyment of using a Valve Index on PC VR, just without a Valve Index, and replace the PC with a PS5. But it's actually even better than an Index, mostly because of that display. The only thing that I've been really confused on lately is why most titles aren't using the face haptics and DualShock triggers, but that could be an early thing and maybe it's added post-launch or closer to launch. Either way, I'm obviously super excited to get it in hands and spend some time with it because it's shaping up to be a really freaking good headset. I just do hope in the back of my mind that the PSVR 2 titles make their way to PC eventually, kind of like a lot of other PS5 titles have, and maybe official PC support for the headset? Maybe? Probably not, but still excited though. So this video is getting pretty long and I've got another one to make for this week. The Japan in VR episode 2 is coming out this Saturday, so leave any questions you have down below and I'll just try and answer as many as I can in the comment section. It could be about any specific thing that I showed here or just about VR in general. This has just been a crazy week of VR everything, so I'm always down to talk about it. But that just about wraps up most of my CES 2023 VR coverage. There are still quite a few small things that I will be posting about here and there, and most of that will be on my Patreon, mostly as a massive thank you to everyone that made this trip possible. Seriously, this whole trip could not have been done without your guys' support, so thank you so much again. And I hope you all enjoyed, so until next time, don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.